And we're live. Hi, my name is Sarithkin. I am a knight out in Ontier, and I had set a quest for myself to fight 50 Dukes this year, and then all the wars got canceled, so I'm not going to be able to do that. So what I've decided to do instead is interview 50 Dukes this year, and Havordh actually got to fight him this year. He went to a practice with me before he moved to Atlantia. He was going to be Duke number 3, but I had to fit someone in before they went out of country. So it's Duke number 4. And Havordh has reigned in 3 different kingdoms, Atlantia, Glenaubin, and Ontier. And he's been Prince of Tiri, which is a principality in Ontier. And you've been a Palatine Baron?
Of the Far West.
Of the Far West. So we're going to have lots to talk about, lots of different interkingdom anthropology stuff. Why don't you tell us from the beginning where you got started in the STA?
Wow. So I started in Atlantia in a mercenary group outside of Atlantia. So people that didn't quite play with the SCA. So I did Boffer stuff. I did Markland, which is like halfway between Boffer and the SCA. Helmets, but rattan weapons with some padding. Also did some of the LARP games, more of the Tolkien playing things. I mean, all the way back into the early 80s. So I did all that for quite some time. And then I didn't really take the SCA seriously until I moved out to Guam. So I spent 2 years in Guam as a teacher, and all they had was the SCA. It took a while to find it because back then we didn't have the internet. And so it was, if you had a phone number, you were lucky. So I actually went from bar to bar Halloween. I went to every bar on the island on Halloween in my armor, figuring that if I went to every bar on the island, and there are a lot of bars on a mostly military island, I would find the SCA. And I ran into Conrad Oscambria who happened to be in his armor in one of the bars. And I was like, hey. And so he introduced me to all the fighters on the island and started getting serious there. And my first SCA tourney was for the Palatine Baron of the Far West, which I won. So that was a very quick introduction into what the SCA is all about. I don't recommend it.
So were you still in Guam when you got knighted?
I was. It was my second year in Guam. I'd been Palatine Baron. I've been out. I fought my first 2 crown tourneys in the West as Palatine Baron because they figured some unbelt isn't going to win. Managed to get, they're very much like Ontier crowns. There were 98 people fighting. I think Duke Havordh and I were the top 2 unbelts at like 18 and 19.
Nice.
At that point, they were like, we got to watch this guy. And 2 years later, they knighted me. Jade actually came out to Japan and knighted me in Japan, in Misawa.
And was that a surprise?
It was a surprise. I had no clue. I flew out there because I was giving up the baronial championship. And so I flew out to Misawa, Japan. And Jade had come in, and Jade and I argued over who was going to fight the buys. And by argue, he was crowned, so he won. But Jade, being who he is, said, we'll fight 2 out of 3 to see who gets to fight the buy. So we fought 2 out of 3. He beat me handily. And then he fought the buy, and I was going to get my armor off. And then there was another buy, and he said, oh, you don't understand, Havordh. We're going to fight 2 out of 3 every time there's a buy to see who gets to fight the buy. So I think that day I must have fought Jade somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 times, both during the tournament and then pickups where he just stood and held the field. And they knighted me that night.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And what year was that?
1993, I think. A long time ago.
And then when you moved back to the United States, did you move to Atlantia?
Yep. In fact, 2 weeks after I was knighted, I was in a severe car accident, broke my legs in about 13 places, collapsed lung, you name it, I broke it. And then moved back to Atlantia, and people wondered like why they knighted this cripple guy who couldn't fight.
So were you in your car accident in Guam?
I was. Yep. I've been there for 2 years. It was May 31st, so March 31st, right before April Fool's Day. 45 mile an hour head-on collision each way, and it was a mess.
So how did you recover from that?
Quickly, actually. I was asking my doctor how long it'd be till I could walk again, and his response was, the question is whether you're going to walk again. So I was like, well, it's my birthday in July, so I'll be walking by July. We had an argument about that. But I was in, let's see, by June, I was in a walker. By July, a cane. By Penzic, I was walking. I went to Penzic. I was walking with my sword as a cane. And I was going to fight actually in Penzic, and the mercenary group that I fought with hid my armor. So, which shows you the love. But I fought in September in Atlantia. It was, let's see, April, May, June, July. So 5 months after my accident, I fought my first fight, went down to a sea raids, Atlantia and Trimaris, went down to a sea raids. I fought one field battle, about, 60 guys aside, and fought one battle, limped on the field, used my sword as a cane, walked up, fought a couple guys, walked off the field, sat down in a hay bale and said, that was the dumbest thing I've ever done. Someone take my armor off me. And then just slowly had to relearn how to walk and then relearn how to fight.
You're a very determined person. Can we go back to your knighting for a second?
Absolutely.
Besides Jade, were there any other knights there?
No. So there were no knights there. And so Jade, I go up and Jade and his queen Shahina at the time, they actually asked me about an hour before court whether I would accept the position in the chivalry. And so it wasn't as much as it wasn't like a surprise at court. He basically sat me down. I thought he was going to ask for me to be one of the squires. And so I was thinking about that. He sat me down. We had a conversation about what a knight is, what a squire is, what that relationship is, etc. And he basically, after talking, he said, so I have one more question for you. Would you accept the position in the Order of the Chivalry of the West? And I told him I had to think about it because I've been in the SCA for a hot minute. Yeah, I've been landed barons, so thrown in the deep end. But when you have Jade as the example, it's tough to think you're worthy. I mean, especially after he just handed me my butt on the field that day, right? I mean, I think I beat him twice that day out of maybe 23 fights. And he finally came back and I told him no. So I said, no, I'm not ready. And there's a long story and we don't have time to go into it. But over a drink or two, I'll tell you the story. But he and Shahina basically talked me into it. It was one of those things where they know what they want and they're not going to take no for an answer. So Shahina, very devious, worked me into a corner by well, do you trust Jade? Do you trust his opinion? How am I as a queen? Would you trust my opinion? And then we both think you're worthy. What do you think? And you're like, danger, Will Robinson. And it's like, I would be honored. And so they knighted me that night. The only thing that was the most striking, and I use that term purposefully, is the fact that I'd never seen a knighting. So I'd run court and everything else, but we didn't have knights out there. The only knight we had was Sean, and he never left Guam. So when he buffeted me, I had no idea it was coming. And after the fact, he said, so I wasn't sure if you wanted a manly buffet or just a kind of a ceremonial buffet. I figured we'd just go with manly. And I thought, well, yeah, if I'd ever actually seen one before, that'd be. But it was absolutely amazing.
That sounds pretty cool. I guess, if you're the king's man, you got to trust the king's judgment, right?
That's kind of what it came down to.
Yeah. So when you say that Sean was the only knight in Guam, are you talking about Duke Sean?
Yes, Duke Sean.
So did you meet him in Guam?
That's where I cut my teeth. I would find him and drag him to practice every moment I could get because he was the guy to beat. And when I could beat him 50-50, I knew I was doing pretty good. I didn't know just how good that was. I mean, he was 17 at the time, maybe 18. But yeah, so every time Duke Sean and I see each other, I let him do all of his, talking and all of his discussion. I listen to him, and then we'll find a little corner and we'll beat the crap out of each other. And just cuz.
Nice. I didn't realize that that's who you cut your teeth with. That's really cool.
I've known him for a long time.
So when you went back to Guam after getting knighted, did he give you any words of wisdom?
He had actually been rotated out before I got knighted.
Okay.
So I got knighted at the end of the 2 years, and his rotation had already happened. He already rotated out.
All right. How long after you moved back to Atlantia did it take you to win Crown?
6 years.
6 years? Did you train for Crown?
I did. I actually fought in quite a few crowns before that. And this was the time when I was trying to learn how to fight again. And so I was doing everything. I mean, I was fighting, I was going to everything within about 100, 150 miles. And if you're in the DC area, there's something almost every night. You've got a practice in Maryland, a practice in DC, a practice in Northern Virginia, an event every weekend. So you could do something 4 nights of the week within an hour. And so I was doing all of that. Now, when you say practicing for Crown, since I'd never really won one, I didn't really kind of seem to understand kind of what you needed to do to win a Crown. It was still fairly new to me as far as for like what you have to do to prep for a Crown. I think the reason why I won Crown is that particular Crown was what they like calling a weird weapons tourney. And by that, it means the guy with the lowest OP in the 2 fighters choose the weapons. And so I fought sword and board once that day. So in fact, when I beat in the finals, I beat Duke Vladimir with polearm. Duke Vladimir is probably one of the top 3 polearmsmen in the world. Because I'm a fantastic spearman, but I can't hit with a polearm to save my life. And so every time he'd get close enough to swing to me, I would just throw him out of the list field. I'd just bind him up, throw him out of the list field, and we'd start again. Eventually I stabbed him twice, and that was the end of it.
How many times did you reign in Atlantia?
Just once.
Just once? So did you meet Mary Grace, your wife, through the SCA?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it did. It was in an after event. Actually, I met her because we were at an event, and it was right before, about a month before Gulf Wars. And Countess Ariana asked me if I was going to Gulf Wars. I said, absolutely. And she goes, don't move. And she ran over and talked to this really attractive young lady. And she walks over, and Mary Grace said, hi, are you going to Gulf Wars? I said, yes. She's like, were you going to drive? I'm like, yes. She goes, you're going with me. And when a beautiful girl asks you to go for a 13-hour car ride, you don't say no. So our first date, because we saw each other at the after party, realized we were interested in each other. And then that 13-hour car ride was our first date. So when I won Crown for her a couple months later, we basically did our Crown and our wedding within about 3 months of each other.
Wow.
It was a little crazy.
That's incredible.
It's amazing what the right consort can do.
Well, she is definitely a power consort. She's a power woman. So that's really cool. I didn't realize that you guys met and got married that quickly. And I mean, you just knew. That's excellent.
It did happen pretty fast. Yeah.
So
we actually won Crown before we were married, and then we got married, and then we stepped up.
Very cool. So what was your first reign like?
New.
Yeah.
It was new. Everything was new. I mean, I'd been a landed baron, and so I'd sat in court. I'd done that, but at a kingdom level, it's so very different. And I grew up in Atlantia, so these were all people that I knew. But what your first reign, your eyes get opened up to kind of the dark side of the SCA, the things that you have to deal with as Crown or as Seneschal, or as the Exchequer or whatever. I saw quite a bit of that. And so that was very eye-opening. But at the same time, we just enjoyed ourselves. Mary Grace and I, her Grace and I both believe that reigning is a job. It's not about you, it's about the people. And so we did our best. I think we did in the 9 months that we were Prince and Princess and King and Queen, I think we skipped an event 3 times. So we did something every weekend for 9 months. Because we thought we may never do this again. Who knows? And so we wanted to do it right. And so we went everywhere. We went to the far corners of the globe. We had entourage. We would call barons and baronesses and say, if you have people who want to serve, we would love to have them help us. And we just tried to get as many people involved in our raid as we possibly could. And because of that, we had a really good time. We got to know a whole lot of people we would have never known otherwise.
Right.
It was really great.
That's cool. So how long were you in Atlantia before you guys moved to Glenavon?
Oh, let's see. I think we were there for maybe we ended our reign. We were there for about another year and a half, and then we moved down to we actually moved to Drakenwald for 2 years.
Oh,
We went to London for 2 years. Lived in London for 2 years, and then we moved to Glenalbyn from there.
no raining in Drakenwald?
We went to a crown. I fought in a crown in Estonia. It's another long story, but they fight differently. So if you think about it, they're like every kingdom we have. If all of the kingdoms were within 6 hours of each other,
Right.
and so you might have the people from England who fight like Meridians. You might have the people from Germany who fight like Anstiorans. You might have, and all of that as a mix. I didn't realize, because I had to retrain to fight every kingdom I go to make sure that I'm fighting according to their calibration. And so it was a lighter calibration in London. So when we went to Estonia, there were a lot of Germans there, some Swedes, some Poles, and they hit like a ton of bricks, and they don't like taking anything light. And so I hit a couple people soft, they hit a couple people harder and harder and harder until I bent someone over and hit him in the spine really hard, like almost with the intent of hurt. And I said, you know something? I'm done. And so you don't need to fight that way. And the minute I got angry, I said, no, that's not. We said, we are in a walled town that's been around since the 9th century. We're going to go have a good time. And I think that was the right call to make.
They have some amazing event sites there. Did you ever go to Double Wars?
I never went to Double Wars, but we had an event in Lincoln Castle. I have pictures of myself fighting on the walls of Lincoln Castle. We went to Caerphilly Castle, had an event in there. I actually had to apologize to one of my opponents because at one point, I think it was Caerphilly Castle, we were in the courtyard and all the ladies were on the balcony and they were all like waving their handkerchiefs and all on the balcony. And I just looked at my opponent and I said, I'm really sorry, but I have to kill you. Like this is, and then we went to feast afterwards and you're sitting in a place where Henry V actually stopped and had dinner there. We were having an SCA feast in a place where Henry V had stopped and eaten at some point. It was just crazy. Like,
Blows your mind.
It really did. I mean, you're sitting there like looking up where the minstrels were playing and you're like, that's where their minstrels were playing, where the high table was. That's probably where there was a high table if there was one. It was surreal.
Interesting. So,
but not every event like is like that, right? I mean, you have events at schools and events at parks, but when you can have one at a castle, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and what year did you move to Glenalbyn?
Oh my goodness.
Am I saying that right?
Glenalbyn. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep, Glenalbyn. I don't even remember. So let's see. My daughter's 17. I gotta do the math. 2002. So 2004, I think.
And how long were you there before you won a crown?
6 months. I won their second crown.
Okay.
We had to get permission to fight.
So.
2005. Apparently.
Okay. So, I mean, did you train for it? Or, I mean, obviously you enter crown, you know, if you win, you're going to serve. But, right. So you didn't train for it?
No, we just come from, but again, when I say I didn't train for it, I mean, I had come from London where I had Duke Elfin, and that was the guy I fought every week. And so we would do practice with everyone else, and then Duke Elfin and I would just spend 20, 30 minutes, right? Just going at it with each other and just doing crown level fights all the time. And so, when you say, were you fighting in crown? Like, I never fight in crown. I just fight the biggest, baddest people that I could find all the time. And if you do that enough, everything else is going to follow, as long as your head's in the right place.
So let's talk about your head. Have you ever had like tourney choke problems?
I need to pee every time before a crown. I get my armor on, and right before the first fight, I need to pee. I get butterflies in every crown. Do I get tourney choke problems? Not really. I don't think I've ever choked in a crown, like choked, as far as nerves or anything. I mean, and I think it's probably because I fight top level fighters whenever I can. Like I've always made it my job to find the best guys I can fight, whether it's Duke Sean or whether it's Duke Elfin or any of the Dukes. If you've got strawberry leaves, I want to swing a stick at you. And so when you get to a crown and your headspace is I'm fighting the next fight, and I look at that shield on the wall if you have a shield tree, or I find out from the herald who my next fight is, and you think, okay, who is that? And that all you worry about is your next fight, And then when you're in the finals, you can't think about what's going to happen if you win or what's going to happen when you lose. It's that fight. That fight is no different from the last 5 fights you had that day. You got to get through that guy.
So is that like your tourney day way you execute? It's just execute the fight in front of you?
Absolutely. There's only 2 things that I have that you would call like just what I do is like the tourney style that I have. I need to know who my fighter is as early as possible, whether it's the herald calling it out or whether it's going on the board. And I don't like when someone else tells me. I want to walk over there. I want to look at the board. I want to get up. I want to look over at that board. I want to look at that board. It's even better if I can look at that board and then turn over and see that fighter standing there, because then that's a great headspace for me. I go, okay, that's who it is. That's who it is. What is he wearing? What is he holding? How's he been fighting today? And then I go and I sit down, and I'm usually, thankfully now, it's the first fight of the field. And so I don't have to wait for it.
Right.
But, and then when I come off the field, one of my, either a squire or I've had rent-a-squires. I walk off the field and I need someone to, I don't know why, but I need someone to take my shield off of my arm and just walk me back to my chair and then sit down. And that's it. The more serious I am about crown, the better I usually do.
Why do you think that is? Is it just a focus?
It is a focus. I need to be focused when I fight. If I'm not focused or if I'm playing, I fight okay, but it's not at that level. But there is a crown tourney level focus, and it's not even a crown tourney level focus. It's the focus when you're saying it's time for me to win this fight.
Right.
And that could be at a crown tourney. That could be at any tourney. But crown tourney is where you've got to do that 8 times in a row. And so you have to be in that right headspace, at least for me.
So what's the role of Mary Grace on tourney day for you?
I need to see her on the side. I don't need her to bring me anything. She does. She brings me water. She'll bring me a banana. She'll bring me, liquids, whatever I need. But really, it's when I walk out on there, I look to the side. I see Mary Grace on the side. She watches every one of my fights. I don't think I'd do anywhere near as well if she wasn't standing there. It's just that level of support. It's knowing that someone is there, and that no matter what happens, win, lose, or draw, they've got your back. And when I say you have to have the right consort, is I've fought and I've won a crown for a different consort. It took me 3 crowns to win for a different consort. I won back to back for Mary Grace, and it took me 2 or 3 to win for a different consort because it's not the same.
Was that in Glenaubin?
Yeah.
And the crowns in Glenaubin, did you win those sword and shield?
Sword and shield, all of them.
Okay. And what are the crown tourneys like there?
A little smaller. You'd have probably anywhere between 18 to 24 in a crown. And you'll usually fight each round best 2 out of 3. You'll fight 2 out of 3. And then if you lose 1, that's just 1 loss. And so then you fight the next person 2 out of 3. And if you lose 2 out of 3s, those are your 2 losses in crown.
That's a nice bit of fighting.
Yeah. Atlantia does it very similarly.
Okay.
Usually.
So you reigned in Glenaubin 3 times then?
4. 3 with Mary Grace and 1 on my own. Okay. One with a duchess, or one with a now countess, Merrigan, who Nancy Ellen threw in front of me and said, "Look, you have to fight for her." This is one of those people who, if she wasn't on tier, she'd be a lion. Right? She is amazing. She's like everyone's mom, Morgana of the Mists. She's fantastic. She was a landed baroness, and she had come over to the house at some point, and Mary Grace says, "Okay, you ready for Havordh to fight for you?" She's like, "Oh, ha, ha, ha." Mary Grace is like, "I'm not kidding. You should be queen, and Havordh will do it." And I'm like, "Okay.
All right.
I'll do it." it took a couple times, but then we won right before we found out that we were leaving. Right before like Mary Grace found out she got a job in Seattle. Well, Eastern Washington.
Okay. So I'm sort of fascinated by interkingdom anthropology. What is your favorite tradition in Glen Aubin that isn't the same as Ontario or Atlantia?
Wow. We cheat. We just bring our favorite traditions with us. We have. We started doing AOA circlets in Glen Aubin, and we started doing AOA circlets in Ontario. And I think that's my favorite tradition. And so everywhere I go, if they don't have it, we bring it. There's something about making someone a lord or lady in the SCA. For many people, that is the greatest award they will ever get. They may get, baronial level awards or, little group level awards or something else, or it's the one they're going to remember the most. They were a year in, 2 years in, 3 years, whatever it might be, when they start giving back to the society and you get to raise them to a lord or a lady, putting a circlet, putting a crown on their head and raising them to the nobility and saying, you are noble. Because again, you are giving back to the group on a kingdom level. It's amazing. It's a powerful feeling as a crown to do that. And I know Ontario is great with their necklaces, and I think the necklaces are super cool, especially how awesome they are and how much work people do to make them.
Right.
They're awesome. I mean, they look amazing, but there's something visceral about putting a crown on someone's head and saying, you're a lady or you're a lord. It's just amazing.
I mean, the whole like charter system and necklaces is amazing. Like how much work goes into doing that. And we say charters, but I mean, they look fantastic.
Yeah, they change every reign. Like Ontario is the only place where I've seen where that happens. And that's, just the number of skilled scribes that take to get that done and how much work they're willing to do is amazing.
It's crazy. So were circlets for AOAs an Atlantean tradition? Is that where you got it from?
Yes.
Interesting. Is that I guess it is probably your favorite tradition from there if you brought it with you everywhere else.
It is. It's my favorite one. We brought it from Atlantia, took it to Glen Aubin. Glen Aubin, because we were a second crown, it was interesting because very similar to, because they had just broken off. My favorite one.
Sorry.
They had just broken off from Meridies. And so they took most Meridian customs, traditions, and everything else as a whole and said, congratulations. Wait, it wasn't Atlantean? Oh, my wife's changing me. Oh, it's
Mary Grace.
It is Meridies. Whatever. Okay. Oh, there we go. So we brought it from Meridies to Atlantia, then to Glen Aubin, then to. She's got to fix everything I say because I can never remember everything.
So did she live in Meridies for a while and she brought it with her?
Actually, she lived in Meridies before that part became Glen Aubin. She lived in the Principality of Glen Aubin as it became a principality. And then stayed in the Principality, but Meridies was the originator of kind of all of the sumptuary laws. They had tons of them.
Interesting. That's interesting. So besides adjusting to calibration in each kingdom, what other kinds of adjustments do you need to make when you move like you do?
Politics. Yeah, everyone says the SA isn't, some people say the SA is very political, not political. It's just who gets along with who and who doesn't. And sometimes it's households. Atlantia has their households. One northern household doesn't like the southern household, or this one household doesn't like this other household, or everyone hates this one guy, or whatever it might be. Really, just kind of like navigating that, I think, is always really interesting. I tend to ignore it because I don't really care like who likes who or who doesn't like who. But you still have to know what's happening and at least understand. Oh, this is why this person never speaks to this person, or what have you, because it's still in existence in the SCA. I think that's really interesting. The other one is just, especially on tier, is the fighting conventions. because it's not just calibration, it's all of the fighting conventions. Atlantia, you're going to be in, all the righties want to fight in A. They're going to put their shield in your armpit or in your elbow. They're going to push real hard, fight in A. It's a brutal fight. It's a hard fight, but it's just as skillful as on tier sniping from C, and then leaping into B, throwing some shots and jumping out. And it's just the differences in just fighting techniques. Again, like if you look at on tier, right? I always call it the on tier cowboys. It's a whole bunch of people who fight as a ragged line. You might have some households that fight really well together, but mostly it's the knights and dukes who are like standing out by themselves going, okay, I'm standing in the field by myself. I'm going to go fight 3 or 4 guys. Atlantia, it's everybody in the shield wall. And it's a solid press, and they're very serious warfighters. And so it's like all the different fighting conventions, not just calibration.
Yeah, I think because we're so isolated up, in the northwest corner of the United States, and it's so hard to get to anything big, that war's not a big thing up here. It's just not.
You just fight each other all the time.
Yeah.
You can go your entire SCA career and never leave your kingdom.
Well, that's not fun.
I know it's not, except for West on Tier 1. You get to go out and hit some Wests.
Right. So Seattle and the Pacific Northwest have a sort of like notoriety for like the Pacific Northwest freeze. You know what I'm talking about? Like people are nice to each other, but they don't actually like talk in the elevators, or it's called the Seattle freeze. You've never heard of that?
I've never heard of that.
Okay. Well, then you probably didn't experience it. I was going to ask if on tier is that way for people coming in. If you,
we were really lucky. I don't know what it's like for most people, other than the fact that we were called those, foreign Duke and Duchesses, which is part of it. But we lucked in when Mary Grace came up before I came up. She came up a couple months before I did. It was Wastekeep and Steercar and Stearna were Baron and Baroness, and they just took her into their home and took her into their camp and just showed her the most hospitality we had seen since Glenavon's Southern hospitality, which is legendary.
Right.
And so we got in with the right people. And then when I got there, it was, it was Steercar and Skeggy, and I was actually still Crown of Glenavon, so Skeggy was the king, and I was the king of Glenavon, and so that worked out pretty well. And I think we were just accepted right from the start. I think there's a difference between being accepted by individuals and being accepted by the group. I mean, we've been there 6 years before we stepped up, before we won Crown and stepped up, and we were still that foreign Duke and Duchess. I mean, 6 years later. Right. When we stepped up and someone said, oh, that's that foreign Duke and Duchess. And this one guy said, oh, wow, how long have they been here? And someone was, oh, I don't know, like 6 years. And this guy was like, I've only been playing for 4. Like, they've been here longer than I have. How come I'm on tier? They're like, well, they came from somewhere else.
Yeah, we do have a tendency in Ontario to label people that aren't born here, whatever that means, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mary Grace and I, one of the oddest traditions in Ontario, we didn't even know that until right before we left, is when they called out all of the dukes and duchesses of Ontario. So they, I guess they gave Christian his duchy, and they called out all the dukes and duchesses of Ontario. Mary Grace and I weren't called. We'd only reigned once in Ontario. So we were not dukes and duchesses of Ontario. And so tradition was, unless you were a duke and duchess made in Ontario, you weren't called. So, it's some of that. So maybe some of that freeze is institutional freeze.
That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because when you move here, you get put on the OP, and you get put on the OP as a duke or duchess.
That's true.
That must just be something left over from a time. Yeah, maybe it's time to update that.
I mean, are we an on-tier Duke and Duchess? Well, we'd only reigned an on-tier once, right? And in fact, one person was actually called because their second reign, I think it was Ulfer, because his second reign was an on-tier, so he was an on-tier Duke, right? So that's the Dukes that were made an on-tier. So it'll be interesting to see what happens the next time. Like someone gets their third in on tier or fourth.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that. Huh.
We didn't either. And then we asked someone, and they said, "Oh, that's why." I'm like, oh, "Okay, yeah."
Okay, that is a weird tradition. But you know, we have weird things, like when you were talking about the whole fighting convention thing. Like, it drives me crazy. We either have rules or we don't. You know, it's not like you put things in and this is how to fight polite unless you don't want to fight polite. You know,
one of the hardest things to get used to, and even moving to Glenavon, it wasn't the same. Like, it was kind of or not kind of the same. You know, taking your leg if like you'd leg someone else or whatever. It was a courtesy. It wasn't until I got to on tier where they have that odd point system, where if you're 2 points above your opponent, you have to give them one, right? If you're an arm and a leg above your opponent. I mean, and you know, as you know very well, I had a crown where His Majesty's steer card called me out because I had taken Arminius's, was it Arminius? I think so. His leg and his arm. And in Atlantia or Glenavon, it's crown. My job is to kill you. Like, I took your leg and your arm. I step in. I hit you a lot. That's the end, right? Like, and Steercar stopped the fight and said, "Yo, you're 2 points up. You have to give him a point." And I'm like, I have no idea what we're talking about, but I assume you mean an arm or a leg. And so I threw my shield aside and you know, stepped in and hit him. And I walked off the field, and someone asked me, "Well, why did you give him the arm?" And I'm like, well, I took some guy's arm and a leg, and your tradition is to make it fair. And taking a leg, so I'm a turtle with a 34-inch shield, like that's just worse.
Right.
Like, that's not being. And I asked a lot of knights and dukes, and I said, "Why is this the case?" And I got a whole lot of responses about being honorable or chivalrous and everything else. And it finally struck me, it has nothing to do with that. Every single tradition in on tier is to make it more enjoyable for the populace. Every fighting tradition on tier has is to make it more fun for those people who are watching. If you think about shield conventions, smaller shields, you're standing further off, you're going to fight further out, you're going to throw a lot more shots. When you miss one, you miss it clean and you miss it badly, right? And you get hit hard. All of those things, you know, I mean, not that the fighting in on tier is any different than Atlantia as far as from like getting hit harder or what have you. But if you've got two people with 24 by 36 shields and they're all fighting in A range, it's just as an intellectual fight. It's a little more thuggish looking, but it's less heroic looking, right? Because it looks like you're thugging it out. Whereas from B range or C range, it looks like it takes more skill. It doesn't, but it looks like it. And that's where when you're talking about the points and taking a leg or doing this, it's less about honor, less about chivalry, and more about, again, being a hero and making it look good for the populace.
That's an interesting insight. I've never really thought about it that way. Because, you know, I was just raised that that's the polite thing to do, right? This is how you fight polite.
Right. And polite is so different. Atlantia, it's not about polite. It's about the win. It's about fighting. Right. So I've taken an advantage from you that I earned, and then I'm going to use that advantage to kill you faster. That's it. That's the end. You know, and so when people take their own legs, you're like, oh, well, you know, yay, chivalry, you know. Are you really saying that guy is so bad that if you don't take your own leg, that there's no possible way he can beat you? Like, that's the only reason you do it? Okay, it's a little different. So I think. So
but we don't do that.
We don't, right? You know, but we don't do it for one point. Right, it's only 1 point, right? And so so you can't say it's fair, right? It's about, you know, is it egregiously unfair? You know, so that's why I kind of came to the understanding that it was about being a hero. It was about what looks good for the population, right? You know, if you got some guy who doesn't have an arm and a leg and you're standing over him with a shield and a sword, well, that's no fun for anybody.
Right.
Well, who's it not fun for? Other than the guy that's going to die, like just that guy. You know, like he's going to die. Well, yeah, he's going to die. He lost 2 limbs. He should die. You know, but the audience will see that and go, well, this isn't even fun to watch anymore. Well, if you give yourself away, if you give your arm away, oh, it's still fun to watch. You know, now anyone could win again. You know, and it happens a lot where you give away a point and you lose. You know, it's more enjoyable to watch that kind of a fight. It gives you that opportunity to see things like two guys fighting single sword and weird shots that happen. You know, the Kjartan fight from Ursulmus. I'm sure everyone can look it up on YouTube.
Yes.
You know, I mean, those things don't happen somewhere if you just have a sword and a shield and thug some guy with one arm, right? So
That's true.
yeah.
So we had talked once, and you had said that one of the things you do really well is read a fight. And I'm just wondering, like, what do you mean by that, and how do you do it?
So it takes an understanding of physics and the human body. Is if you throw a shot, there is a 90% chance that because of the way you threw that shot and how it's going to return, is you have a 90% chance that you're going to select your next shot because of the ease of the throw. So if your first shot is a flat snap, right? You're going to throw that flat snap. That bounce is going to then lend itself to your second shot. The chances of you throwing that flat snap and then coming back and throwing a flat snap, ridiculously low, at least not quickly, right? Your fastest shot is going to be that flat snap offside leg, right? And I have terrible shield work. You'll throw a flat snap, I'll block your flat snap, and I've already blocked the other side. And the only reason that my stick's over here is on the off chance you're going to throw a second flat snap. So I've already protected from both your shots because those are the only two things you're going to throw. That's it. And then if you start throwing that offside leg, my shield was there a half second ago. And so now I've got my stick ready to throw a shot. And so when I talk about reading a fight, it's reading your opponent's stance, your opponent's sword strike, and then just knowing from, again, 30 years of doing this, 40 years of doing this, what's going to happen next. And it's a lot about muscle memory because your body knows what's going to happen. And it's a lot about, you know, where the opponent's fighter's legs are. And then also knowing your opponent, right? If you see me fight, I might throw a tentative shot first, a quick offside snap, and take a half step back. Where did you step? Did you step with your right leg? Did you step with your left leg? Did you square up? Did you take a big step? And then I'll do it again. And then when you take that step, my sword's already there. And so it's reading what your opponent is doing, how your opponent is throwing their shots, and then capitalizing on how your opponent fights and how they move.
That's interesting because when Ragnvaldr came out and taught at the Collegium in Antir, he had a very similar methodology where he would sort of do things to see how his opponent would react, and then he would know. Like they would basically tell him where they wanted to be hit.
Yeah.
So that's what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And then if your opponent's making absolutely no mistakes, you jump them. Like, and then it's who's swinging faster and better, right? Like if your opponent is so tight that like when they step forward, they don't make mistakes, they don't leave themselves open, they don't do anything else, then you're going to have to put them on their heels. Because what they're telling you is, I'm really good at advancing and staying tight and staying in my guard and not overextending and not opening up and not stepping wrong, right? And that's when you get aggressive. You start putting them on their heels. You'll double tap them, you'll put them on their heels, and then you're running the fight. And then when you're running the fight and they're backing up, then you're making them make mistakes as opposed to letting them make mistakes and capitalizing.
Interesting. Another thing you do really well is you throw a wrap. Basically, it's almost like you don't have to come back on the plane of your body. Like you throw it in front of you. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I throw what it's a modified grasshopper, where your sword kind of just, it's a grasshopper because it hits grasshoppers on the way around.
Okay.
It's what's called a grasshopper. It basically swings down towards the ground, and all you do is pivot, right? So all you do is, you throw it offside, and when you throw that wrap, all you do is bring it down, and then you just throw it right at your hip and just extend your hand out. And so that sword goes all the way down towards the ground and then comes up underneath the shield. And you can do the same thing from the top down. You can just throw it from here, you just pop it out and just wrap it down here. And what you're really doing is you're letting your sword do the majority of the work right at the end. You're throwing it, and then you're just sliding it and wrapping it with your hand right at the extension of the blow. And whether it's down below or up top or right out here. And you can throw that wrap, and I throw my hand really far out. And so that angle, when I'm over here and I throw an offside and I'll throw a wrap this way and I throw the wrap out here, you've got to block really far out. you to block the tip of that sword as it comes around. Yeah.
It doesn't help that you're a lefty.
It's totally cheating. I'd be a terrible fighter if I was a righty.
Let's go back to reining for a second. What is your favorite part of reining?
Favorite part of reining? Watching Mary Grace. It is. She's an amazing queen. I can remember reigns in Glenavon where they have feasts in Glenavon at almost every event. And I will sit down and we'll be eating, and Mary Grace will get up and she'll walk down and she'll find all of the kids, all of the new people, and she will sit and talk with them and chat and have a one-on-one experience with these new people or these children or other people. It's amazing. I win crown because she's an amazing queen. I'm an okay king, but she's an amazing queen. And just watching her do that, and then the organization, watching her organize a reign is just impressive. As you said, she's definitely a power queen.
I was super impressed at the way that she took charge in Knights Council, because we needed someone to do that, and she just bang did it, and I was like, "Ooh, we're gonna get stuff done this reign."
I'll tell you, if I did not have her as a consort, I would not have reigned as often as I have, just because she makes it easy. And I make the joke, right? Like I pay the entrance fee and she does all the work, right? We have a kilk about that. There's an entire song, "I Will Survive." It talks about how I don't do any work and she does everything. And thank God I paid the entrance fee. But in reality, she is that amazing. And so I think one of my favorite things about reigning is A, watching her work, but then B, again, recognizing people for the stuff they've done. It's just, there's nothing more powerful than recognizing someone for the work that they have done and making sure that you're saying something. And it's something that isn't done in a lot of kingdoms, but we do it when we reign, is to make sure that we have talked to people who know them. And so we will have what it is they've done, what were some of their greatest accomplishments, and we want everyone to know. And so, yes, we have note cards, and yes, we try to memorize them, and sometimes we end up reading them. But as they come up, you're looking over at your note cards. What has this person done? What are they known for? Is it cooking? Is it cleaning? Is it setting up camp? Is it all of those things? And to be able to give someone an award, and you can have comments that actually says exactly why they're getting this award. Not just, "You're awesome, and we're going to give you this award. Thank you. Have a nice day." These are the 3 or 4 things that you do that are really impressive. And to be able to do that and see people's faces as they're coming up, and it dawns on them that you know what you're talking about. You've talked to people about them. It's not just, someone said you should get an award, so I'm giving you one. It's, no, I believe in this because this is why. Yeah, and I have facts here that explain why.
Yeah, in the effort to make it special.
Yeah.
And personalize it. I think that's super important. And you guys did a really good job of that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, let's look at your killing tool.
Okay, my killing tool is not as nice as the killing tools we have seen before. So here's my killing tool. Okay. It is really used. There's the end of my killing tool. It barely even functions.
There's not a thrusting tip on that?
Nope.
Okay.
No, it's just extra tape. Okay. One, because I hit with a tip quite a bit. You can see how it's opening up. I hit with the last 3 inches a lot with my offsides, and so I tend to have to rewrap it, and then it breaks, and then all I do is retape it. When it starts shattering, I just retape it, because I will use a piece of rattan way past its brooming life. It doesn't matter to me. It means I have to swing a little harder. Okay. The only time I'll fight with a new stick is at a crown. That's it. And I'll make a new stick for crown. But it's just a regular plastic basket hilt, strapping tape around the tip. The only thing that's unique is that my blade is probably canted 5 degrees off, because it's a real pain to turn your wrist on every single shot. And so my blade is canted about 5 degrees. Not enough, but I think it makes a difference. It doesn't, but it's just canted a little bit.
Okay, so you have a trigger in there, just one?
I have just one trigger. It's just your standard trigger, just so it doesn't come out of my hand. It's right It's attached to my index finger.
Okay.
It's fairly loose. And that's just because I have it so that I can put my hand with a glove all the way in the back of my back bucket, right? So it's literally sitting as far back as it can go without my hand coming out of the bucket. And that just makes it easier with those turnarounds. Is that instead of your hand being in the back of the bucket, which is how I used to fight, with a trigger, you've got both. Your hand's in the back of the bucket. You have a little bit of extra room because I'm that far down on the stick. And so a 36-inch stick, if you're holding it that far down, you got 30, it's not 36 inches. It's like you're fighting with a 37. So, yep, and that's it.
It doesn't look to me like you planed it. Is it plain?
No, it is a inch, whatever's legal, 1.25 inches with one layer of strapping tape and one layer of duct tape. That's it. No planing, no nothing. And I don't use the shaved rattan, because if I use the shaved rattan, then when it brooms, it's useless. You
can't wrap it and still use it.
Like I use one piece of shaved rattan, and when it brooms, you don't have that outer hard shell to put it back in.
Yeah.
You've got nothing. And so when you tape it up, then it just falls over and it just snaps in half. And so you need that outer covering.
Well, cool.
Yep, that's it. Pretty basic.
Yeah. So I didn't talk to you about this before, but it's not a secret. You are fighting blood cancer, right?
Yep. I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay. And you have fought through your chemo and fighting, right?
I did. I saw pictures. I fought Ursulmus maybe 2 weeks after I'd finished my last round of chemo. The pictures, I looked green. Like, thankfully I was wearing a blue tunic. I looked pretty rough. But yeah, no, I fought through it. I continued fighting. I didn't practice though. I just, went to some events and I went to Ursulmus and fought. It's in most it's what we call partial remission. So non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is an incurable cancer. It will come back. And so when it comes back, it comes back. But I managed to go into partial remission. I did chemo for 4 months, something like that. Just infusions every couple months. And now I've got a maintenance infusion that I do every 2 months for the next 2 years. And I think I'm now almost a year down. So I've got infusions I do every 2 months. So I still have my my internal port.
Yeah.
They stick in. In fact, the only humorous thing about that is when they asked me where I wanted my port, right on my left side, I had to figure out which side my shield was on because I didn't want to get hit. And I'm like, okay, so my shield's on this side, so I should probably have you put my port on my right side, because that way the chance of someone getting a sword in there is really little. And I actually talked to my oncologist. I was like, hey, is it dangerous if someone hits my port? They're like, well, it could flip upside down if it tears the stitches and stuff. And it's going to hurt a lot, and then we're going to have to move it. And I'm like, like, no, put it on the right side behind my shield. I'm not going to fight polearm for a while.
Has being diagnosed and fighting it with chemo, has that changed the way you feel about fighting or training or reigning at all?
Wow. No, I don't think so. I think the only thing that has really changed is like any near-death experience, right? Like, I almost died when I was in my 20s in my car accident, right? I should have died. My doctor said I just wasn't smart enough to realize I should have died. And this probably, I mean, who knows? This could have killed me. And so, I mean, as far as for fighting or reigning, I mean, I'm just as serious about it, right? I mean, other than just as serious about having fun, I'm just as serious about being the best I can be. Whether, I mean, coming back off of cancer and having to relearn to fight again was very similar to having to relearn how to fight with broken legs. It's just different. I didn't have the stamina. I didn't have the muscle mass. I had extra weight. I put on 20 pounds. So what do? How do you fight? You have to fight more conservative. And so then you have to think about it. And then your body can't do what your brain wants it to do as fast. So, okay, now what am I going to do? And then this is the first time I've actually used a pill, like my entire life. I've hated pills. I've never used pills, never liked them. As a lefty, I don't work on 5 or 6 shot combinations as a lefty. But But what I've used a Pell for is I've got a Michael of Bedford basket hilt, which must weigh like 10 pounds. And then I've got a piece of that, what was that plastic that was legal for a little while?
Siloflex.
Yeah, it wasn't Siloflex. It's the solid.
Yeah, I have one of those. I can't remember what it's called. They're heavy.
I can show you that. I can show you my Pell sword if you want me to get it.
No, it's okay.
MG will grab it. But I've got my Pell sword that probably weighs 5 times what my regular sword weighs. And so that's my Pell sword. Right? I mean, it is a solid piece of plastic, and this thing probably weighs 3 or 4 times what my sword does. And then I will just do one shots, right? I'll throw offside, 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 wrap, 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 leg wrap, leg wrap, leg wrap, fake offside, fake off leg, fake the offside and the wrap. And what I'm doing is I'm just working out my arm and getting my heart rate up using a heavier stick. And then I go to my stick, and then it feels like nothing again. So like that's like the big thing I've changed, is that I've changed some training that I do to make up for the fact that I need to put some muscle mass back on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Are you ready for the rapid fire last 10?
You got it.
Bring it on. All right. If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
I'd fight Uther again. I fought him once. He beat me. I hate that. I'd fight him again. He got my leg before I could get his. I don't like losing. That's not true. I love losing. I love losing because that means I've got something to learn.
Well, so and then you get the fire to want to fight him again and win.
Absolutely right. Like, so now Uther's one up on me. So I've got to find some time and make sure I can at least go 50-50 with him.
Nice. Now that you're in Atlantia, who would you like to see reign in your kingdom?
Ooh, who would like to see reign in my kingdom? Most of the people that I know that I really wanted to reign have while I was gone. I think maybe, who I'd like to reign? What's their name? It's right. So I would like Cedric and Bridget to reign now that they're here with us. And nice. If Cedric can't win crown, I'll just win for Bridget.
Do they have residency requirements there?
They do. We'll have to wait for a year. And so by the time all this COVID stuff is over, we'll be here for a year. So
all right, fingers crossed.
Right. Fingers crossed it's over quicker.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait.
If you could talk stick with anyone in the world for an hour, who would it be?
Oh. I would still choose Sir Sean, just because I learn something every time I'm with him. And some of the stuff he teaches, I go, I don't need to use that. But he always teaches me something when I'm with him.
What is your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
I'd probably have to go with Kingdom of Heaven. Yeah, I'd have to go Kingdom of Heaven.
If you could add a rule to the rules of the list, what would it be?
Rules to the list. I don't know. I mean, I would just say take your shot. Like just take it. Right? Like nothing's worth your honor, buddy. Just take it.
All right. What is your favorite tournament format?
I love an Atlantean speed tourney. You line up on both sides. One side gets the challenge over, or like crown tournaments, where basically one side gets the challenge in. So whenever a challenge in tournament, I want someone who wants to fight me. That first round, I want some young punk who wants to come over and kick my butt. I love that. And if I'm on the unbelt side, I'm going to pick the baddest, meanest guy that I think I'm going to kick my butt. I love that.
Yeah, I think when I was an unbelt, I chose Duke Sven like over and over and over. He must have hated me. Yeah.
I'm sure he didn't. I'm sure he was thrilled every time he walked over.
What is your favorite event?
Favorite event? Yeah, I'd probably have to say Gulf Wars.
I was so bummed that got canceled this year. It was going to be my first time.
I mean, it's got a lot that Penzic has to offer, except for everyone's friendly. They're all Southern, right? Like, I mean, all the people who have camps, you can walk into any camp and they'll be like, "Hey, what are you doing? Can I get you a beer? What do you need?" You know. Whereas Penzic, you've got closed camps, and you walk in, and people are like, "What do you need? What are you doing here?" And Gulf Wars has falcons and dogs and horses. I stood at the bottom of the hill having 20 horses charge down the line right before the field battle.
Wow.
And standing there and feeling the ground shake and talking to the guy next to you going, I'd have pissed myself already. I was like, I would have left 2 minutes ago and left you here. Like it's amazing. It's an amazing event. It really is.
Hopefully next year. If you could have any helmet, regardless of cost, what kind would it be?
Jeez, I don't know. I love Araya's new helmet, the one that she just got. So Araya, that's pretty amazing. That's gorgeous. Yours is gorgeous. I don't know. I have 6 helmets, and I used the one that I made at Count Thorbrand's shop 25 years ago. I can't, I just gave up. Like, I have 5 different helmets that I've bought, and I keep using that. I keep going back to the same helmet.
Yeah.
Because I made it, and it fits my head exactly how I want it to. Yeah. I'd have to make one. I'd have to sit at someone's shop, Vren or somebody, and just have them help me make one.
Right. Totally custom. All right. It's Saturday morning at Estrella, and several people want to talk to you about last night. What did you do?
I did one walk around with my wife because I'm required to. One social walk around, and then she puts me in a chair, and then I sit and drink a little bit, and then I go to bed early because my legs, after I fight, I'm missing most of a kneecap. I'm missing a bone in my lower leg. Like, after I fight all day long, I walk like a penguin. And after one round, I'm done. That's it. I can't walk anymore. So I sat down, and if people came to me, I had a great conversation. But otherwise, I went to bed early every night.
All right. Who's your favorite fight ever?
Stefan von Dresden. That guy, I still think he's the best fighter in the SCA. We both threw the same shot 2 or 3 times. I threw an offside, and I knew he was going to throw a wrap because he threw an offside too. So we both threw the offsides because he fights lefties really well. I knew he was going to throw a wrap, so I brought my stick back, and I blocked his wrap. And as I'm throwing for his back, and I know I'm going to hit him, there's no question about it. He has lost this fight. I get 9/10 of that shot, and I feel back right on my shoulder blade. He had basically, after he wrapped me, he felt it hit stick, so he short-shotted the next wrap. Wow. So his came in a millisecond before mine landed. He won. I think it's the only champion's fight I've ever lost. The man's amazing. He reads fights like I do, and he's just as fast as I am. And that was the most fun fight.
Is he in the East?
He was in the East at one point. Yeah, I think then he was military and he moved around a bit. But yeah, he's an amazing fighter.
He's a legend. He's on my must-find list.
Yeah, you say 50 Dukes, right? But like, right. If I was gonna fight, like, he could be a Duke anytime if he wanted.
Well, right, like he's a bonus, like, badass, right?
Right, absolutely.
Well, I really, really, really appreciate you talking to me for an hour. And we're gonna miss you in Ontier, and I hope that everything's great out there for you guys. And I will look forward to either Cedric and Bridget reigning, or you and Mary Grace, or you and Bridget, in a year. So thank you very much. My next interview, I guess tonight we have an interview with His Royal Highness Seifer, I don't know how to pronounce that, and Sir Gabe, their brothers. My sister and I are going to interview him. And then Monday, I'm going to be talking to Duke Brennan from the East, who is a really smart guy. So that should be fun. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sir Rifkin.
Bye, you guys.
Bye-bye.